you everybody for tuning in for part 3 of what has been such an incredible series with our friends at the Italian Cellar. And before I turn it over to Ed and Julie, I would like to introduce Stetson University's president, Christopher Rolke.
Oh, thank you so much, Alex. And I'm sorry that I'm unable to join you for the entire wine tasting. And by the way, enjoy your wines, but do so in moderation, right? I would be remiss as a college president, university president, if I didn't express the importance of moderation. I'm delighted to be here, and I am so grateful to the White family and also to you, Julie, for these wonderful wines that I've received here in DeLand Hall. And I just wanted to give people a warm welcome. I was sharing with Ed and Julie ahead of time that, during these very challenging times that all of us are confronting around the globe, how important is it that we get together to do something that's both educational and frankly, flat out fun. And I want to thank them for their time and their energies and their expertise and sharing it with the community. Alex, I don't want to take a lot of time, but I'd be remiss if I didn't introduce Krista Bofill, who is on the screen. Krista Bofill is our brand new, just started on August 9th, Vice President for Development and Alumni Engagement at Stetson University. Krista, a warm welcome to you as well.
Well, thank you. And I'm so thrilled to be a Hatter. So thank you for this warm welcome and with wine.
Great. I just want everyone on the screen to know that we are full speed ahead for a Stetson education this fall, despite our challenges. We are doing so with all safety and health protocols in place. Certainly, if you're following the news, Florida is at the center yet again of some real challenges, but we are really a tenacious community and a resilient community, and I stand incredibly proud for Hatter Nation, about Hatter Nation. So again, thank you. I'm sorry that I can't stay. Go Hatters!
Go Hatters!
Thank you.
Thank you, President Rolke, and thank you, Krista, and welcome, Krista, to the Stetson family. We are very excited to have you. And with that, I will stop talking and go ahead and turn it over to the people you came to see, Ed and Julie.
Good evening, everyone. Okay, so I guess I'll start off tonight. So this is again the third in our series of our virtual tasting for Stetson University. We wanted to start off, Alex, if you can help us out a little bit. If you guys have any specific questions, anything about what we've done in the past, anything about the wines that we've had in the past, go on and ask those now. If you can type them into the chat, we are here to answer those questions so that we can move forward with tonight's event. As you can see, we started out session 1. We did the introduction to Italian wine. We're going to go over that a little bit because I know there's some new people here. Hopefully you guys all have your little wine packets that we sent out. So that should give you a little bit of background on us, and it should give you a little bit of background on the wines that we're going to be tasting tonight. Do we have any questions coming, Alex?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, well, we can go full speed ahead. So I will, okay. These were the options that we had, of course. So we had our 4-pack, our 2-pack, and our 2-pack of just session 2. Let's see. And I guess I'll pass it off to Julie. We'll talk about the map again.
Hi, good evening. Again, thank you so much for joining us. So last time we were exploring Sicily and its wines, Trebaki and Zighibo, but tonight we are moving to central Italy, which is the region of Abruzzo. Now, Ed, I know you can control the cursor. So if we look on the large map on the left, if we notice that Abruzzo is central Italy, however, sometimes when we're talking about its linguistic aspects, its cultural connections, sometimes it's even considered a part of southern Italy. So up until about 1961, the region of Abruzzo, so if you also point to the region right below it called Molise, so the one right below it, yes, right there. In fact, up until 1961, these regions were combined and they were known as Abruzzi. So it's very interesting because sometimes I'll run into people and when they talk about Italian ancestry and they'll say that they're from Abruzzi. And so it was because, of course, their ancestors had, emigrated from Italy when it was still one region. So that's just a little tidbit to know in case you still see the term Abruzzi used, it's because Abruzzo and Molise were combined. Now, what's also interesting, because Molise to the south is a smaller region, it shares many of the grapes. So the wines that we're drinking tonight, You can find Montepulciano wine, you can find Pecorino wine, also in Molise, because they shared many aspects of, not even just cuisine, but also wine culture. But Abruzzo, like I said, it's central to southern Italy, depending on, the source. But it's known as a very mountainous region, in fact, the most mountainous region of Italy. And unfortunately, because of its location, if you've noticed, the central aspect of it, so down the spine of Italy, we have the Apennine Mountains. And so unfortunately, along this spine, this tends to be an area that can be rather earthquake prone. And so you might have heard about the Abruzzo region in recent years because there have been many earthquakes around this particular region. But if you've also seen spaghetti westerns, if you can think of spaghetti western films, and you're watching them and you're thinking, wow, that looks like, I don't know. And how would you describe, would you say it's more like Colorado?
It's kind of funny because we were driving through, I think Abruzzo was our last stop in 2019 before our last trip out of Italy, together. And it was really strange. It looked kind of like a mix between Colorado and Utah and Nevada, all in the same area. And it's very dramatic how it transitions, because you would think that it would be these mountains that transition to hills, that transition to flatlands or something like that. No, this is totally different. It's mountains that transition to flatlands, that transition to the sea, that transition, come back inland and transition to a lake district. It's crazy. It's absolutely nuts.
Right.
And that's the cool thing about it, because in that little area, they talk about the spaghetti westerns, and in that little area, you could easily move around within a couple miles and shoot different scenes that made it feel like to the viewers that it was totally different areas, and that they traveled a long ways on horseback or something like that. So it's really neat. It's really cool.
And what's another thing is that I always think of Italy when I look at the large map, of course, it's a peninsula. And of course, what peninsula do we also know very well? Florida. But, with Florida, so for example, I'm on the West Coast. For me to drive from here to West Palm Beach, which is probably my city, like directly east of me, it would take me about 2 hours to do at most. However, I'm dealing with flatland. But, to go, sometimes people will arrive in Italy, and if you notice on the map, Rome and the region of Lazio is the region to the west. So considering like the West Coast to East Coast, to go from Rome to the region to Abruzzo, because of the mountainous aspects of it, it doesn't take only 2 hours. It will be rather, it could be 4 to even 5 hours. And sometimes that's something to keep in mind about Italy, is that we have mountains, we have hills, we have flatlands. It's basically all the topographical elements in one. So.
And the other thing too, just to keep in mind, is when you travel through this, they have tunneled through entire mountains, and there are 12 and 14-mile tunnels that are pretty common, especially as you get out of Lazio and you get into Abruzzo. So right in this area right here that I'm pointing out on the map on the left or the right. So
perfect.
Definitely.
All right, so then again, we have some pictures of Abruzzo, even though it is, considered very mountainous and earthquake prone. However, there are many picturesque villages. So sometimes if you even hear the term borghi, that means it's a plural term for villages. And some of the most beautiful in Italy are located in the region of Abruzzo. So certain ones like Santo Stefano is probably the one. But, if you were to go onto Instagram and maybe search like Abruzzo, you'd probably see that Persano come up. But the Gran Sasso, the mountains, and then also L'Aquila is the one that was afflicted by an earthquake of 2009. And that's probably the earthquake that if you were to Google search that, it was a little village that was unfortunately decimated. And even today, well, in 2019, because remember, as we passed through there, you could still see cranes. Yep. And they're still working on it. And I actually happened to be in Italy during that 2009 earthquake. However, I was in Rome, so I was about a few hours west, and it happened in the middle of the night. And I remember waking up. I was chaperoning a school spring break trip with high schoolers, and I remember waking up and thinking, well, this is odd. I don't know what this is, but everything seems fine. No one said anything, so I went back to sleep. And then the next morning, even none of the students knew anything. But then we turned on the news. This was before cell phones, like, you know, the ones that you would use like internationally, and we saw it on the news. So, but again, a region that still has so much beauty, but still rebuilding.
Yeah, for sure. And just to tell you a little bit, there are these really cool, the Trebaki. Were you done with the slide, Julie?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, the Trebaki, they're really neat. They're on the coastline, and they're these little fishing huts that a lot of them have been turned into restaurants. So you can actually, when you go and visit, you can reserve a little table or a little hut yourself, and then they'll prepare you some fresh fish from the sea. So they have nets that they can drop down and pick up fish right from the sea. It's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing was our recipe for tonight, which I believe Julie might have. Did anyone have a chance to make some pasta for dinner tonight? Hopefully,
Are we able
someone
to see
did.
it in the video? And because
Yep.
I can't see myself. Okay.
I think we can. I think everybody can see it. We should be pinned somewhere. So yes, so yeah, this is the pasta dish. We got actually a couple other pasta dishes for you guys as well. What else did you make tonight? You made multiple pasta dishes.
So this is the second one is called pasta alla chitarra, and this is another typical dish of Abruzzo. And the reason why it's called chitarra is because the pasta, there's actually a contraption to make the pasta very thin. I do not have that at the moment. However, it's usually very thin pasta. And when people think of American cuisine, like Italian American cuisine, we think of spaghetti and meatballs, which if we speak to Italians from the peninsula, from Sicily as well, they probably scoff at us. However, the origin of that dish came from this one, because if you notice, there are smaller meatballs. They call pattine because they're very small. However, for Italian American cuisine, they've become meatballs that are rather large, whereas a typical Italian dish would be your pasta first, and then the second dish would be the meatballs.
Right.
We just, cut and chase. But this is another example of pasta alla chitarra. So 2 pasta dishes, only 2 for tonight. Darn. But 2 very typical of Abruzzo.
Well, that's awesome. So I think, Alex, if we can we open up the everybody's microphone so that way they can join in the conversation as well as we move on to the actual tasting event part of tonight?
Absolutely, yes.
Just so you guys remember, and before we really start talking about the 2 wines that we have, we had talked about it before. When you really start out, trying new wines and really exploring things, just pick 1 or 2 things from this list. Pick the whether it's the sip or the smell or the look of the wine, what you see. Just pick 1 or 2 things. Start there, and once you've got that down, just like with everything else, move on and add something else into it. And the better you can describe a wine, the better somebody can help you find something that you're really going to enjoy. So that was just a little note from our first session. And then I know, Julie, we talked about the classifications before too. We have the 3 classifications. Would you go over that one more time for us, please?
So just keep in mind, when we're dealing with Italian wines, we have basically a pyramid. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a pyramid of quality level. So for example, at the top of the pyramid would be our dark G wines, Denominazione di Origine Controllata and Garantita. These are wines that basically have very strict protocol and standards. So if you have a wine, so your Chianti Classico, your Barolo, your Barbaresco, your Amarone della Valpolicella, those are just examples of dark G wines. It just means that the Italian government has certified that wine to follow a specific protocol, from harvesting the grapes to how the wine is produced to even, aging and bottling the wine and even selling the wine. So that's the top of the pyramid. There are currently 76 dark G wines. Then we go to the middle part of the pyramid, which is the dark wine, so Denominazione di Origine Controllata. And this would just mean that we have wines that, again, not a quality issue. It's more of, well, their standards are a little more relaxed, as in perhaps these grapes could be harvested from a larger area within that region. perhaps there's not as much aging. There's also maybe not as many rules as to when to sell certain wines. Because, for example, a Chianti Classico, especially if it's a Gran Selezione, it would have to be aged for at least 2 years. And then it has to be also, there's a certain amount of time it would have to be in, of course, French barrique. And then, of course, it would have to be bottled for a certain amount of time. And then it can be sold at a certain amount of time, like at a certain date. However, with dock wines, those would be relaxed. So famous dock wines would be, again, one that we'd have tonight. So I'm going to put on the Abruzzo dock. So yes, we have that one. And then other dock wines, especially most of the wines that come from Sicily, that's part of the Sicilia dock. And it's usually because it just means that the grapes can come from more parts of the region versus maybe a specific comune or town or a specific piece of land, like it could be with some wines. And then at the bottom of the pyramid, it's an IGT, which is Indicazione Geografica Tipica. And again, it's just the rules are relaxed. This is maybe where we have more blending taking place. And it's usually blends that are regional. So I was talking about, Molise and Abruzzo earlier. So the grapes that are very popular would be our Montepulciano grape, the Pecorino grape, but also there would be Passerina, there would be Tentilia. It just means that we probably have some blends. They probably come from even more parts of the region. And there's probably not aging. It's a younger wine. So again, even if you think about some of the wines that even have high price tags. So if you think of, the Super Tuscans, so a Tignanello or Sassicaia, some of those are labeled as IGT wines. So it's just because those producers, they didn't want to follow the traditional Chianti Classico blend. They wanted to do what they wanted to do in Toscana. And so they did. So that's why we have the pyramid.
Well, and it's pretty cool too, because, it's not necessarily that the Doc G wine is going to be any better than the IGT.
Right.
It's all about, the passion of the producers and what they wanted to create. I always say it's kind of like, being an artist in a studio or something like that. You just have all this, ability to create anything you want with the IGTs, whereas you have to be, abide by the strict standards in the Doc G wines. And the doctor,
Right.
So.
And something else to remember is that with a label, so for example, if you went to the store and you saw Chianti Classico, a Chianti Classico will always be labeled as a Doc G wine, because for it to be called Chianti Classico, it has to be Doc G. However, you might see a Chianti, which just means it was from a different area, but that's Doc G. But you'll never see a Chianti Classico IGT. That means there's some fraud going on, but that's just something to keep in mind.
Okay, guys. Well, welcome to the tasting portion of the event tonight.
Ooh.
Hopefully you guys have your wines open and you've tried a little bit and you like everything that you have so far. But we're going to start off tonight with the Pecorino. So the Pecorino, again, is this one right here. And it comes from Abruzzo. So both of these wines come from Abruzzo. That's why we're studying the area tonight. Julie, did you want to tell us a little bit about the wine before we actually go into it?
Okay, so Pecorino, it's a grape, a white grape, of course. And what's interesting, let's start to talk about the name. So in Italy, sometimes we'll have grape names that are very reminiscent of this particular region. And so as I mentioned before, Abruzzo is very mountainous and it's well known for its sheep population. And of course, so we have many sheep herders. And so the term pecora, so means sheep. And it was the reason why this grape is called Pecorino is because this grape was so abundant in the Abruzzo region that sheep herders would basically even have it as like a snack grape. And so that's how it had gotten the name Pecorino, because it was very popular with the sheep herders. But what else it's also known for is that it is native to Abruzzo, but it can be found in the region south, which is Molise. It can also be found in the region due north, which was Le Marche. But it loves the mountainous conditions because, of course, with mountains, we're dealing with cooler temperatures. And this is a grape that is also known for having very high acidity. And it's good for this because of the conditions that it can be grown in. And they also have been doing studies that this is a grape that can be able to morph with climate change. So that's what Italy is starting to study now. What grapes will be sustainable? Because they're already starting to see the effects of climate change in Italy. If you had noticed in the news, Sicily the other day was the equivalent to 100. What was it, at 118 degrees?
Right. It was crazy.
So that's Sicily. However, more Mediterranean, but some of those higher temperatures are reaching on the mainland as well. So because of high acidity, it also makes some very interesting sparkling wines. So it's just something to keep in mind about our Pecorino wine. Let's analyze it, shall we?
Yes, let's do that. So who has the Pecorino open tonight? You can speak up at this time.
Yeah. Aaron Nazi, here we are.
Nice. Cheers. Cheers, everyone. So who I know we have the cheat sheet in front of us and it says pale yellow. Does everyone see the color? Are you looking at something, or what are you looking at it against? Are you looking at something against white?
Oh. Yep. Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we see the pale yellow, and this is what we're talking about when we're talking about the color of the wine, So what do you smell? What do you guys smell? Because it might not be the yellow fruits and florals and herbs that we have on the paper. It might be something totally different.
What do you smell?
Fruit in there. Yes, fruity.
Yeah. And taste a little bit too. You might taste something different. If you were to compare this wine to something, what would it be?
Minerals.
Minerals. Yeah. It's got a lot of minerality to it.
Nice acidity.
It is. It doesn't really cut. Sometimes it cuts to the back of your throat, and I don't like that at all. So I don't like it when it's too sweet, and I don't like it when it's not sweet enough. So you have to find that perfect wine in the middle somewhere.
It has a nice long finish as well.
And who said that?
Nancy Altman.
Awesome. Okay. So when you say long finish, what do you mean by that? Because we talked about that last time too.
Sort of stays in your mouth a long time, rather than having an abrupt ending of the taste.
That's it. 100%. So that's what people are talking about when they're talking about the long finish. That's exactly what they're talking about. So yeah. And what I know some people have snacks and stuff like that. What are you guys snacking on with this wine tonight?
We're doing cheese and crackers, so I want to see what it's like with that, because it's always a little different, right?
It is. Does anyone else have anything else they're trying tonight with this one?
We got a cracker.
Yeah.
We just finished dinner.
Yeah. Well, crackers are good with it, or it's pretty nice by itself. Like I said, it doesn't need something to pair along with it, but if you were to pair something with it, the seafood in Abruzzo is absolutely amazing. And there's lots of awesome seafood restaurants in Florida for those of you who are in Florida. So we would definitely recommend a pairing of some sort of seafood, or even the cheeses and stuff like that we were talking about earlier today.
I'm actually having the Muddy Bites. It's the chocolate peanut butter Chex Mix because I eat dinner early, and it goes fabulous with this as well. So
That's great.
Next
I
time
think,
think about that.
a lot of people don't really drink a lot of white wines with chocolate, but I think it is phenomenal. I think the red wines with chocolate is amazing, but white wines with chocolate too. It really,
Interesting.
you can kind of differentiate the flavors and stuff like that. It's pretty cool.
And that's another thing that we like to emphasize, is that pairings are a personal preference. So even if it's something that's not, maybe considered typical, but it's your preference. In Italy, it's more the term, I guess, the phrase, if it grows with it, it goes with it, because many wines are regional. And so many dishes, are regional, just like the ones that I had shown earlier. But, of course, our sense of spirit here, it's like, okay, Ed is usually phenomenal at saying, all right, I get, I'll talk about the traditional one, but then he'll say, but I think of this. And it's usually something that's 100% that probably I would have never thought of before. But that's what it is, personal preference and being creative.
Did anybody have any questions about this one?
Velodoro, I don't know.
Yeah, what is the phrase Velodoro right underneath the label for the Pecorino.
Okay. So when we're talking about this wine, it was an IGT, and the name of the IGT is Terra de Chieti IGT. So that's the classification. Velo d'Oro was just the name of the specific area on the Umani Ronchi vineyard for this Pecorino wine.
Hmm.
And that's interesting because it's an IGT wine. And usually with an IGT, they might not talk about the specific areas, but Umani Ronchi is a very large producer in Abruzzo and has many different properties. So this is just highlighting that property that would be within that classification system.
Very nice.
And another thing is that tonight, both producers, so especially even Umani Ronchi, it was highlighted at, so that every year they do something called Opera Wines, and it's highlighting the top 100 producers in Italy. And Umani Ronchi has been going every single year. So they just released that from June. But both producers tonight were highlighted there.
And if we were looking for this wine, how would we find, or does it matter in terms of the vintage, the year? I know some people would say, well, I wouldn't drink a 1925, 22, 20, 18. So is there some place where you would go
You mean
to?
2018?
That's what I mean. I know, and I'm only on my first class. So how important do you think the vintage year is in terms of the quality of the wine?
That's a great question, because usually the producer will even discuss that, because of course, every year we have different weather conditions. And so especially, we have the grapes maturing, that's happening, from the spring into the summer into the fall. And if we have summers that are very warm or even very rainy, that can affect the grape at harvest. And then of course, when the grapes are harvested and then of course produced into wine. So usually producers will either comment on that, but it's something good to consider, because, of course, now we have a very warm summer. We're hitting records in Europe. Italy is now making the record for its heat. Again, Ed knows Italy in the summer, I compare it to Florida without as much air conditioning available. So yes, and imagine that on the conditions for these grapes to grow. So it's something that is to keep in mind, which is why I was mentioning before that this is a grape that they see can do well in the heat. And so it would be interesting to note a 2021 Pecorino, of course, in 2022, because it wouldn't be released until then, how that one actually fares, because it's supposed to be a grape that can sustain heat well. So yeah, this is an excellent question, because producers will talk about that. They'll even say, maybe not this year, but of course the wine will probably still be very good. They will note that.
So
Well, I mean, and just to jump in a little bit too. So, when it comes to the wines that we have, they come from medium to small producers. So these are probably two of the larger producers that we have in our collection of wines. So when it comes to having a product that is a good product, that is kind of mandatory for them to have that, to be able to keep their name out there. They just wouldn't produce the wine if it was a bad season from the harvest. So, when you look at red wines or wines that you want to age, we did a little Instagram thing last night, and we were talking about aging wines and, how long you can keep them and this, that, and the other. But when we're talking about that kind of stuff, these wines, these are wines that we'd want to drink, within the next couple of years. We wouldn't want to, keep these around for a long time. So, the white one, or even our Montepulciano is, it's a 2017, but maybe 5 years, it's kind of at its prime right now. So yeah. Okay, guys, well, let's go on and move on to the Montepulciano d'Abruzzo, which is our red wine for the evening. Does anybody have any other questions about the Pecorino?
Oh, I just wanted to say that when I had the pecorino with a bite of cheese, it actually got less minerally and more fruity, like pears.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I thought pears, the first time that I drank it, my thought was pears. So
Yeah.
that's actually what I was hoping that somebody would say. Thank you.
Extra credit. No, I'm just kidding.
I'll pay
All
you
right,
later.
so Montepulciano. Now, something to keep in mind, sometimes I know, so the name of the grape is Montepulciano, and the wine that we're drinking tonight is Montepulciano di Abruzzo, because it's made from the Montepulciano grape that is native to Abruzzo. Sometimes this wine or even grape can be confused with the wine from Toscana called Vino Nobile di Montepulciano. That's a different region and it's a different grape. It's actually the Sangiovese grape known as its biotype of Pignolo Gentile, but that's from Tuscany. Completely different, so two different wines. However, the Montepulciano grape is probably, I would say, in the top 10 grapes of Italy. This is probably, for the red, it's number 2 because Sangiovese is number 1. This would be the second most popular red grape. However, in red and white, it would at least be number 3 or number 4.
Wow.
The most. So again, it's a grape that is grown in Abruzzo, and this grape alone makes up at least 60% of the wines that are exported from Abruzzo, but then it makes up a large majority of wines in Marche to the north, and then also in Molise to the south. And sometimes you can, because again, these grapes have traveled, you can find it a little bit in eastern parts of Lazio, even in Campania as a blend, but its main home is Abruzzo. So it's a bold grape. You can tell by that color from looking at that beautiful red color. And it's something to keep in mind that this is a grape that's, again, using Ed's term, is very versatile because it can be a dry wine, like we're having tonight. This can be made into a sparkling wine. This grape can also be made into a rosato, which is the wines that have like the lighter color to them, the pink color. And it can be made into an air-dried and even sweet version. So this is one of those grapes that, because usually not all grapes can do that, where it can do all the different types of wine styles. And so Montepulciano does. And tonight, the one that we have is considered a riserva. So it's a Montepulciano di Abruzzo DOC riserva. And when we see the term riserva, that's usually telling us that we're going to be having a wine that has been aged a little longer than a traditional Montepulciano di Abruzzo DOC. So that's just something, a little bit of tidbit. If you see riserva on a label, that just means a little more aging time. So let's talk about that wine.
So who's tried this wine yet? Everybody?
I love the color. That's my one thing about Montepulciano. Such a
You
beautiful.
know, and that was the thing, because I wanted people to taste it first, so that way we could talk about the color second. So after you taste it, it tastes a little bit different than the color, because the color is pretty intense. The color is that ruby, and it's very deep with there's those hints of purple as well. So if you see that, typically you think, hey, this is going to be a very strong, bold wine. It's not going to have as long of a fit, or it's going to have a long finish. But it's not necessarily the case with this wine. What do you guys think?
Being a wine novice, I noticed that I taste this in a different part of my palate versus the white. The white, I was more in the front of my mouth, and this it's full body. Is it just me because I had a glass of wine, or is that something that is happens with different wines?
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So Mrs. Bakken, Mr. and Mrs. Bakken, thank you for joining. So yes, at one point, if we look at the tasting notes, it's talking about the noticeable tannins. So red wines, we're sometimes dealing with the tannins, that mouth feel. Sometimes it feels maybe in the back of our mouth that our mouth could even be drying. This would be that wine that could do it. So Montepulciano based wines can sometimes be medium bodied, but this one tends to be fuller bodied, so right on the money with that one.
Okay.
And then especially too, depending on what you've paired with it, for some people, they might not feel it as much because, you know, the food has cut into the tannins.
I like this too.
But yes, those
Okay.
are those tannins saying hello.
Yeah, it's
And
nice.
that's the thing, is that this grape, usually the ones that are based on Montepulciano, are, once people really like a Montepulciano based wine, that really gives them freedom to start to explore other Italian wines besides Chianti Classico or Chianti.
Okay. Thank you. It's good.
What do you think about the smells? Do you smell something different than you taste when you taste the wine?
I definitely smelled pepper when I
Yes.
smelled it, but I didn't taste it. So it threw me
Exactly.
off a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else? Do you smell the plums and the blackberries? It's kind of hard. And here's the difficult thing, you know, especially with COVID and stuff like that. I found myself receiving my, you know, fruit and vegetables by a delivery truck. So, you know, when that happens, you don't get to go into the grocery store and smell all the cool smells and you know, kind of buy something just off of the side of it in the grocery store, or the smell of it, or the fact that it seems right. So it's, you know, it's kind of difficult for us to really make those comparisons, but hopefully you did smell the plums and the blackberries. I know I definitely tasted them. It was difficult without the knowledge of what it was supposed to, you know, smell like. It was difficult to smell that before I tasted it, which is something that you'll quite often find.
Right, and a little blind tasting cheat sheet is that when we're looking at the color of the wines, so it's even something that I was using, that if we're dealing with these darker colors, so we're dealing with a red that's bolder, if I were to see this wine, I see that, you know, that darker ruby red color, even with a little bit of purple, I'd say, okay, if I'm thinking about the flavor, the aroma chart, I'm going to go directly to the darker red fruits. So the plums, blackberries, whereas maybe if we think about the wine from last month, the Frappato, that was a lighter red, I would be on the strawberry, raspberry, and then based upon what I'm smelling and then my palate, I make a little more of a delineation between them. But, you know, in a perfect world, we've got the plums, we've got the blackberries. And the reason why, Amy, you're smelling pepper, you know, it's just because of chemical compounds of the Montepulciano grape. It's something called rotundin. And if grapes have a high proportion of rotundin, so like this grape, another grape that's also similarly noted in color from Friuli Venezia Giulia, that's its trademark is pepper. So it's, if the grape has high proportion of rotundin, it'll have that pepper. You won't taste it, but you'll smell it. Like that'll be one of the aromas.
What about the pairings? So the pairings, I know that we had lamb, which is, you know, a lot of people don't have lamb in their local shop, but that's one of my favorite things to prepare. Any type of red meat. I would have to tell you guys, one of my favorite things with this particular wine, if you guys have like it doesn't necessarily have to be a gourmet cheeseburger shop, but like if you have a hamburger shop that has, you know, those big, fat, juicy, greasy burgers with bacon, and this would go absolutely perfect with that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
How about a veal chop? That
That
sounds.
would go really well with it too.
Yeah.
Is that what you guys had for dinner?
Yeah, that's what he had the
last
other night.
Oh, okay.
That sounds perfect.
Yeah. I think the lamb, you know, lamb is a funny thing. We talked about it last night too with the wines that we were tasting. You know, I think just regular roasted lamb and mint jelly goes amazing with this wine. So yeah. Did you guys have any questions about this wine?
I think so. You?
So again, if you're a Montepulciano fan, it's usually once people, because it's, you know, maybe not as well known. However, you could find it, you know, you'll see it on wine lists, but it's as if maybe someone has been introduced to it. As I've mentioned, this is one where it's like, oh, well, I like this.
Yeah.
And then what else could I try? There's 600 to try. 600 native grapes. And we're not even talking about international and the blends.
So when you see it on a menu, and it's quite common, what would you look for in terms of a wine list for a Montepulciano?
So it's interesting because, of course, depending on where you're located, it's of course what the distributors have available. But we would see Montepulciano di Abruzzo, DOC, or we'd see Riserva. Okay, so of course, if we see the Riserva label, which the wine list should say that, because that's an important detail to know. And
I'm sorry, Reserva, did you say?
yes, a Riserva, yes.
Uh-huh.
And so it will just tell you that it's been aged a little longer. And usually with that aging, the price might be maybe a few dollars more by the glass or by the bottle, of course, it'll be a little more, but it just means it's a big, it has a different, even if it's the same vintage as a Montepulciano di Abruzzo DOC, it just means usually that the producer has even maybe reserved a certain part of the grapes to be made into Riserva. There are producers who will have a hierarchy of their grapes as well. But you'll find this probably, I guess most even Italian restaurants or even, other restaurants would have it, because as the third most popular grape in Italy, it is gaining traction.
No.
And what would be its equivalent as a US produced grape and wine? Is there an equivalent?
Okay, so we want something bold.
Uh-huh.
We want something that, and can you think of anything?
The only, the first thought that came to my mind was possibly a Pinot Noir.
Ah, okay.
My reasoning behind that is probably not too scientific. It was just the fact that, it is largely produced, and there's a variance in the smells and the flavors just a little bit. Some are more elongating than the other. And it's a very, I guess, medium-bodied wine, medium to light-bodied, and you can drink it with a lot of different stuff. So that's that would have been my answer, but like I said, who knows if it's right or wrong.
Good.
So, any other questions, Amy? You seem like you have something on your mind that you want to ask us. No.
Put me on the spot. No, I was just chatting with Kathy. I put in the chat box that the red from tonight and the one from the session number 2 were both amazing. So I told Julie, I think earlier this week, that I have a shopping cart full on your website already, or some purchases lined up. So they both have been great.
Well, that's cool. Oh.
And that's so great because Trebaki is not as well known. So, as it's a native grape to Sicily, we talked about last month. And if you were to see that on wine list, I would probably jump up in the air and go, oh my gosh, it's being recognized. But, in Sicily, it's a dime a dozen. But here, I'm glad that, because if you think about it, the Trebaki is a little lighter. So it just depends what mood you're in. If you're in a little lighter red mood, Trebaki, and then we have this one for when you're feeling a little bolder, Amy.
That's it. Well, speaking of that card, I'm not sure if this was the next slide or not, but we do have a surprise for you guys. Allora, which is, it's an Italian word that basically means, well, on to the next thing. Allora. Anyway, so we do have 25% off for you guys on everything in our shop. So all you have to do is type that in the discount box when you go to checkout. Again, it shows you where we can ship to. We're happy to help you guys too. We do have our personal wine advisor service. We have not only tried, but we really enjoy all of our wines that we have. So, we know the wines that we have. We know what we can get. If you guys have any questions, if you need help with gifts, whatever it is, we are here for you. We really appreciate everybody tuning in and everybody being so interactive and stuff like that. There was a lot of you guys that reached out via email, and we really enjoyed the conversations and stuff like that. So thank you very much. Julie?
So Professor Altman has asked a question about having another tasting.
Yeah, of course. We'd love to do that. We really, I mean, I know I've really enjoyed this. We had a lot of fun. We can definitely set something up. So do you guys, did you guys enjoy, I guess we can ask some questions now to you guys. We can put you on the spot. Did you guys enjoy it more in the week, or did you guys enjoy it knowing that it was on the 15th or every month, or what did you guys prefer?
And wine drinkers, but we will make an excuse to drink at any time.
Same here.
Well, that sounds good. Well, we can get with Amy and Alex, and hopefully we can set something else up for you guys. We'd absolutely love to.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, the idea of having a wine tasting party, socially distant, of course. That sounds great if we had the time and we knew in
Yeah,
advance.
it's too scary with the variant.
Well,
I'm
we'll
sorry.
see.
I think the Zoom is working out really well right this minute. Ask me 3 months ago and I would have said, yeah, let's do a socially distant in person.
Like-
Yeah.
But I know not everybody's in the same geographical area also.
That's right. And we can't wait until your next tour of Italy.
I know, we can't wait either.
Yeah, put that on.
Are you
our
sort of
calendar.
starting to thinking about that, or it's just,
Not
you
yet.
can't?
Well, I'll tell you, we have planned a trip for October. However, I bug Julie just about every day with like these weird thoughts in the back of my head. Like, do you think we'll be able to go? Do you think we'll be able to go to restaurants and all this other stuff? So I don't know what's going to end up happening. We might just stay in a little villa on the hillside or something like that for a couple of days away from everyone and make our own food. So I think that's probably a little bit more realistic at this point.
Yeah. So you're gonna go anyway.
Well, we don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll see how everything turns out.
And how's the distribution going as far as COVID's concerned? Are you getting shipments?
That's a really good question, because it's kind of crazy. So you guys didn't know this, but the Pecorino got stuck on a ship outside of New York for about 3 weeks.
Whoa.
So we were trying to get everything out to you guys, but it's still, you don't realize how much shipping is still affected by the virus and by different things that are actually going on here in America.
Yeah.
So yeah, we are having major delays with that kind of stuff. The good news is that we do plan in advance. So our cellar here is stocked up and ready to ship out. So we've already started planning for the holidays, which is kind of cool.
Exciting.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good. Yeah. I talked to my sister from Greensboro, North Carolina today, and she said they went to the liquor store and there was no gin on the shelves. And it seems that there were no truck drivers from Raleigh to bring the booze for a whole week and a half. So they had to buy miniatures.
That's the here truck drivers, there's a major shortage of truck drivers here in like Virginia, North Carolina, because I'm right up near Richmond, so about an hour outside of Richmond.
Yeah, there you go.
And we have, it's absolutely nuts how few truck drivers there are out there, because people don't want to take liability with it. And, that's it. So,
Not to be too political, but do you think they're still getting government checks?
I don't know. Truck drivers are independent contractors. So I don't think that really has, they kind of own their own business. So I don't know if they would qualify.
Okay.
But
wow. Well, we'll all get through this.
Yeah,
and
sure.
meanwhile, there's wine to drink.
That's it. That's the truth. So Amy, make sure and type that code in your shopping cart that you have stuff in, so that way you get an extra 25% off.
Amy has left a comment for us, a question actually.
And Ed, is there a time limit on when that code will be active and not?
We put it out to the end of the month. If we see
Okay.
you guys using it, then we'll extend it out. So.
Okay. Because Amy did make a great point in the chat that September 15th is a Wednesday, so we can certainly gather again on the 15th of next month if everybody would like. And I can include a lot of this in our follow-up next week that everybody will see from me with that discount code if anybody missed it. And if we do decide to do an event next month on the 15th, we can get that set up before that goes out.
Well, we're out of town. Yeah, we can't do it then, but go ahead without us. It's fine. Just keep us posted.
That sounds good. Well, yeah, let's chat about it, and we'll pick out a day and go from there.
Perfect. Awesome.
Okay. Any other questions?
The wine is opened, good for, I read it somewhere, 3 to 5 days, is it, for the Abruzzo wine?
Yeah.
So I would say for the Montepulciano di Abruzzo, because we live in, I know most of us are in Florida and our room temperatures are not as kind as they are in Italy. So
Yeah,
based on those conditions, they can leave it out much longer. However, what I would do is to make sure to cork it, so to put the cork in or
okay,
a stopper, and then I would place it back in the fridge, and it should be still, good for at least 3 days.
okay,
And then it can go past that, but if you want to, preserve the flavors, it's
certainly,
probably the 3 days. But if you go past that and you feel that you try the wine maybe in 5 and it's not that great, because
Cooking.
it's changed,
Mhm.
cooking.
Yeah,
Italians love cooking wine, so this would be perfect. And then, but the white wine could go a little longer than the 3. I'd say at least 5 days. And then again, it could help complement a seafood dish while cooking.
okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank
Buddy.
you.
It was wonderful.
Yeah, great.
Very
Thanks so
nice.
much.
Okay, should have-
Thank you guys. We really appreciate it.
Yes,
Thank you. Grazie mille.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And depending on when this group is able to reconvene again, a huge thank you to Ed and Julie for all the time and effort they put into the packaging of the wine and getting it out to everybody, to the presentations from each series. They have been amazing. And this is certainly a fantastic Hatter owned business to support. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thanks, you
Thank
too.
you. Thank you so much for your support.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye. Ciao.